During World War II, the Sturmgewehr 44 rifle used by German forces made a deep impression on their Soviet counterparts. The select fire rifle was chambered for a new intermediate cartridge, the 7.92 x 33 mm Kurz, and combined the firepower of a submachine gun with the range and accuracy of a rifle. On the 15th of July 1943, an earlier model of the Sturmgewehr was demonstrated before the People's Commissariat of Arms of the USSR. The Soviets were impressed with the weapon and immediately set about developing an intermediate caliber fully automatic rifle of their own. To replace the PPSH-41 submachine guns and outdated Mosin Nagant bolt-action rifles that armed most of the Soviet army. The Soviets soon developed the 7.62 x 39 mm M43 cartridge, the semi-automatic SKS carbine and the RPD light machine gun. Shortly after World War II, the Soviets developed the AK-47 rifle, which would quickly replace the SKS in Soviet service. Introduced in 1959, the AKM is a lighter stamped steel version and the most ubiquitous variant of the entire AK series of firearms. In the 1960s, the Soviets introduced the RPK light machine gun, an AK-type weapon with a stronger receiver, a longer heavy barrel, and a bipod, that would eventually replace the RPD light machine gun. Mikhail Kalashnikov began his career as a weapon designer in 1941 while recuperating from a shoulder wound which he received during the Battle of Bryansk. Kalashnikov himself stated, "I was in the hospital, and a soldier in the bed beside me asked, 'Why do our soldiers have only one rifle for 2 or 3 of our men, when the Germans have automatics?' So I designed one. I was a soldier, and I created a machine gun for a soldier." It was called an Avtomat Kalashnikova, the automatic weapon of Kalashnikov, AK, and it carried the year of its first manufacture, 1947. The AK-47 is best described as a hybrid of previous rifle technology innovations. Kalashnikov decided to design an automatic rifle combining the best features of the American M1 and the German STG-44. Kalashnikov's team had access to these weapons and had no need to reinvent the wheel. Kalashnikov himself observed, "A lot of Russian army soldiers ask me how one can become a constructor, and how new weaponry is designed. These are very difficult questions. Each designer seems to have his own paths, his own successes and failures. But one thing is clear, before attempting to create something new, it is vital to have a good appreciation of everything that already exists in this field." I myself have had many experiences confirming this to be so. There are claims about Kalashnikov copying other designs, like Vulcan's TKB-415 or Simonov's AVS-31. Kalashnikov started work on a submachine gun design in 1942 and with a light machine gun in 1943. Early in 1944, Kalashnikov was given some 7.62 x 39 mm M43 cartridges and informed that there were several designers working on weapons for this new Soviet small arms cartridge. It was suggested to him that this new weapon might well lead to greater things, and he undertook work on the new rifle. In 1944, he entered a design competition with this new 7.62 x 39 mm, semi-automatic, gas-operated, long-stroke piston, carbine, strongly influenced by the American M1 Garand. The rifle that Kalashnikov designed was in the same class as the familiar SKS-45 Simonov with fixed magazine and gas tube above the barrel. However, this new Kalashnikov design lost out to a Simonov design. In 1946, a new design competition was initiated to develop a new rifle. Kalashnikov submitted an entry. It was gas-operated rifle with a short-stroke gas piston above the barrel, a breech block mechanism similar to his 1944 carbine, and a curved 30-round magazine. Kalashnikov's rifles AK-1 with a milled receiver, and AK-2 with a stamped receiver, proved to be reliable weapons and were accepted to a second round of competition along with other designs. These prototypes, also known as the AK-46, had a rotary bolt, a 2-part receiver with separate trigger unit housing, dual controls, separate safety and fire selector switches, and a non-reciprocating charging handle located on the left side of the weapon. This design had many similarities to the STG-44. In late 1946, as the rifles were being tested, one of Kalashnikov's assistants, Alexander Zaitsev, suggested a major redesign to improve reliability. At first, Kalashnikov was reluctant, given that their rifle had already fared better than its competitors. Eventually, however, Zaitsev managed to persuade Kalashnikov. In November 1947, the new prototypes AK-47s were completed. It used a long-stroke gas piston above the barrel. The upper and lower receivers were combined into a single receiver. The selector and safety were combined into a single control lever, dust cover on the right side of the rifle. And the bolt handle was simply attached to the bolt carrier. This simplified the design and production of the rifle. The first Army trial series began in early 1948. The new rifle proved to be reliable under a wide range of conditions with convenient handling characteristics. In 1949, it was adopted by the Soviet Army as 7.62 mm Kalashnikov rifle AK. The AK-47 was designed to be a simple, reliable fully automatic rifle that could be manufactured quickly and cheaply, using mass production methods that were state-of-the-art in the Soviet Union during the late 1940s. The AK-47 uses a long-stroke gas system that is generally associated with great reliability in adverse conditions. The large gas piston, generous clearances between moving parts, and tapered cartridge case design allow the gun to endure large amounts of foreign matter and fouling without failing to cycle. Operating mechanism. The gas-operated mechanism of a Norinco AK-47. To fire, the operator inserts a loaded magazine, pulls back and releases the charging handle, and then pulls the trigger. In semi-automatic, the firearm fires only once, requiring the trigger to be released and depressed again for the next shot. In fully automatic, the rifle continues to fire automatically, cycling fresh rounds into the chamber until the magazine is exhausted or pressure is released from the trigger. After ignition of the cartridge primer and propellant, rapidly expanding propellant gases are diverted into the gas cylinder above the barrel through a vent near the muzzle. The buildup of gases inside the gas cylinder drives the long-stroke piston and bolt carrier rearward, and a cam guide machined into the underside of the bolt carrier, along with an ejector spur on the bolt carrier rail guide, rotates the bolt approximately 35 degrees and unlocks it from the barrel extension via a camming pin on the bolt. The moving assembly has about 5.5 mm (0.2 in) of free travel, which creates a delay between the initial recoil impulse of the piston and the bolt unlocking sequence, allowing gas pressures to drop to a safe level before the seal between the chamber and the bolt is broken. The AK-47 does not have a gas valve. Excess gases are ventilated through a series of radial ports in the gas cylinder. The Kalashnikov operating system offers no primary extraction upon bolt rotation, but uses an extractor claw to eject the spent cartridge case. AK-47, Soviet assault rifle, possibly the most widely used shoulder weapon in the world. The initials AK represent Avtomat Kalashnikova. Russian for automatic Kalashnikov, for its designer, Mikhail Timofeyevich Kalashnikov, who designed the accepted version of the weapon in 1947. Almost from the moment of its official adoption by the Soviet military in 1949. The AK-47 was recognized as being simple to operate, rugged, reliable under trying conditions, and amenable to mass production. Built around a 7.62 mm round with a muzzle velocity of some 700 meters per second. It had a cyclic firing rate of 600 rounds per minute and was capable of both semi-automatic and automatic fire. A long curved box magazine held 30 rounds. And a separate gas return tube above the barrel held a piston that was forced back upon firing to activate the mechanisms that ejected the spent cartridge and cocked the hammer for the next round. The AK-47 was manufactured in two basic designs, one with a wooden stock and the other, designated the AKS, with a folding metal stock. Beginning in 1959, the AK-47 was replaced in first-line Soviet service by the AKM. A modernized version fitted with longer range sights and cheaper mass-produced parts, including a stamped sheet metal receiver and a plywood buttstock and forward grip. Despite their obvious advantages, the AK-47 and the AKM were considered by the Soviet military to have problems with accuracy. Mainly because of recoil forces generated by the powerful 7.62 mm round and other forces known as blowback that were generated by the weapon's heavy internal mechanisms. Those problems were partly addressed during the 1970s, when the AKM was replaced by the AK-74, which adapted the basic Kalashnikov design to a smaller 5.45 mm round with a higher muzzle velocity of 900 meters per second. A later version of the AK-74, the AK-74M, was the main infantry weapon of the Russian army into the 21st century. After the 1970s, research continued into possible successors to the AK-47 74th series, most of them involving some means of reducing the effects of recoil and blowback. One candidate, the N94, allowed 2 rounds to be fired in rapid succession before recoil forces were generated. Other candidates, the AK-107 and AK-971, introduced mechanical parts whose movements balanced those of the blowback generating mechanisms. None of these weapons was accepted for standard issue to the Russian army, however. In 2018 the Russian military began introducing a pair of new rifles from the AK family, the AK-12 and the AK-15, as eventual replacements for the AK-74M. The AK-12 retained the 5.45mm caliber that had been introduced with the AK-74, but the AK-15 reverted to the Soviet-era 7.62mm round. Both weapons featured a modernized chassis that allowed for the mounting of scopes, forward grips, and other tactical accessories. Kalashnikov assault rifles remain the basic shoulder weapons of many armies that once had political and military ties to the Soviet Union, and they have long been the favored weapon for many guerrilla and nationalist movements throughout the world. The symbolic value of the AK-47 to such movements is demonstrated by its presence on the coats of arms of numerous countries as well as on the flag of Mozambique. It has been estimated that some 100 million AKs have been produced, fully half of them outside Russia, and many of those under expired Soviet-era licenses or no license at all. A full range of weapons that can trace their design history back to the AK-47 are produced by the Izhmash Armaments Company in Izhevsk, Russia.